So people always ask us, are there any practical tips that we can do before the end of the year that's going to help put us in a better financial position? And the answer is yes. The financial planning business gets quite busy at the end of the year, and for good reason. There are a lot of strategies that can help you make the most out of your money. And for most of these, you're going to want to start thinking about them before you get too close to the end of the year. All right, so let's get right into it. Welcome everyone, I'm Thiago, and we're helping federal employees have better retirement plans. We're gonna move fast today because there's a lot to cover, so make sure you grab something to take notes with, and then let's get going. The first thing I want you to start thinking about as the year end approaches is whether you want to do an IRA contribution. Folks, contributing to the TSP is wonderful. Max it out as much as you can. But just because you've maxed out your TSP doesn't mean you should stop saving. And there are a few ways to do this. You can always save money inside non-retirement accounts as well. So these are things like an individual account, or if you have a joint account with your spouse. Sometimes people have these assets in trusts, but did you know that you can actually also make an IRA contribution if you earned income? So if you're still working and you've maxed out your TSP, this is even more money that you can be saving and compounding for your future. Now, if you have a retirement account like the TSP and you earn over a certain amount of income, then any contribution that goes into your IRA is going to be considered non-deductible. Okay, so that means if you put money inside this IRA, $6,500, $7,500, depending on how old you are, you cannot deduct it from your taxes that year if you're contributing to the TSP and you earned a certain amount. So then people often say, well, why would we do a contribution if we can't deduct it? Well, I'm so glad you asked, because that money can still be growing tax deferred. Okay, so this is money that can still be invested in continuing to grow for your future. Albert Einstein said that the strongest force in the universe is the power of compounding. So use the power of compounding growth wherever you can. Now, it's important that if you do this, you're going to need to track how much of those dollars in that account is considered after-tax dollars, because any of that growth is going to be considered tax deferred. But all that's needed is that you file a form with your taxes every year, keeping track of that cost basis. Better yet, just ask your accountant to handle it. All right, so how much can we put in? We're going to throw up a chart here on the screen, and you can see here that the IRA limit for 2023 is $6,500 for anyone under 50 and $7,500 for anyone over 50. Okay, so we expect that 2024 is probably going to bring us some inflation adjustments again, so we might see the limits go up to $7,000 and $8,000 respectively, so make sure you check that before you do one for 2024 as well. Okay, we're moving on. So what about if you have kids? Folks, if your kids had a summer job and they earn some income during the summer, chances are they're going to need that money for school or maybe hanging out with friends, pizza money, etc. But did you know that you as parents or even their grandparents can do an IRA contribution for them? So your kids are probably under 50 years old, which means they can do this year $6,500 if they earn that much during their summer job. Otherwise, it's up to the amount that they earn. And folks, this is a great way to help your kids start to think about saving and investing for their futures. Now, if you're gonna do this, you're gonna wanna consider the Roth, because for most of the time, these kids are in a really low tax bracket, so you don't need the tax deduction right now. Put it in the Roth, because then it gets to grow tax-free for them for a very long time. Now, since we're talking about Roth IRAs, there's an incredible strategy that might be beneficial for you. If you're still working and you don't have any money inside traditional IRAs, which frankly is probably a lot of active feds right now, then you could be doing something called a backdoor Roth contribution. Remember those non-deductible IRA contributions because you have access to the TSP and you earn too much money? Well, non-deductible means that you've already paid the taxes on those dollars. Now, normally when we move money from a traditional IRA and put it into a Roth, that's called a Roth conversion, and guess what? We've got taxes. But since this was a non-deductible contribution, you've already paid the taxes, so you've done a Roth conversion and you don't owe any more taxes. That means the full $7,500 gets to go to a Roth IRA, and now it's growing for you totally tax-free. Folks, there's a lot of smart people doing this, so make sure you check whether this strategy is right for you. Okay, we've covered a lot so far, and we still have a few more to go. So do us a favor and hit the thumbs up on the video if you've liked this so far, and to let us know that you're still with us. All right, we're moving along. Next up, start preparing for capital gains distributions. If you are holding mutual funds inside a taxable or a non-retirement account, then this is coming for you. Every year, right around this time of the year, mutual funds will pass on the capital gains distributions to you as the investor. So the first thing we want to consider is, hey, is this the right kind of investment inside a taxable account? This investment is generating taxable income inside an account that's not tax preferred. Maybe you're paying extra taxes when you don't really need to be because there are other investments that don't have this challenge. So maybe there's a different strategy you may want to think about. And we saw this big time last year. Everybody knows 2022 was a hard year in the markets, right? But taxes made it even worse. When we look at the overall stock market return, and here it's represented by the S&P 1500, a lot of people had losses to deal with. And on top of that, they also had to pay capital gains taxes on top of those funds. Folks, we talked to a lot of people who came to us last year with this situation, and boy, were they upset. Tax planning is a big thing in wealth management. You want to make sure that you're doing this kind of advanced planning because it really adds massive value. All right, next up we have RMDs. If you don't know what that is, it stands for Required Minimum Distribution. But basically, when you turn a certain age, you have to start taking out a minimum amount from your pre-tax retirement accounts. The reason for this is that money comes out fully taxable, right? So this is a mechanism to get you to pay the taxes on money that's grown with no tax yet. So this means that you want to start thinking about, hey, which investments are we going to sell to get that cash to be able to do our RMD? Okay, so you want to be looking at your buckets. Do you want to use the cash that you already have available for that? Or maybe not. Maybe it's a year that's up in the market and you want to sell some of those gains in your retirement account, take that money and rebalance it to your short-term account so that you can make those distributions as needed. But the point is, you got to start planning and getting ahead of this right now. This has to be done by December 31st, but a lot of custodians out there have a deadline that's sooner than that for when you have to actually put the request in. So make sure you're on this, but not before this next thing, or rather the next couple of things. First, YouTube tells us that almost 80% of you watching are not subscribed to our channel. So let's fix that. But more importantly, if you are 70 and a half years old or older, and you also like to donate money to charity or maybe to a church, then you're gonna wanna consider doing what's called a QCD before you take your RMD, okay? What's a QCD? It stands for Qualified Charitable Distribution, and it's a pretty cool thing. If you're gonna write a check and send that money to charity, where did that money come from? Probably your salary or a retirement account, something like that. The point is, you've already paid taxes on that money, and that's how you're writing that check. And if you have to take an RMD as well, what happens, right? You take the distribution from your account, so you satisfy your RMD, but that money first hits taxes before you receive your net after-tax amount, right? So it gets reduced by taxes. That's the whole point of the RMD. And Forbes estimates that about 90% of Americans use the standard deduction when filing their taxes. So that means that charitable contribution that you made, you're not getting any tax benefit from making that donation. Well, if we're smart about this, there's a better way to handle this. You still have to make your retirement account distribution, but if you send it straight to the charity, you satisfy the RMD, but you do not have to pay taxes. There's no tax when it goes to a qualified charity. Folks, this is a really nice way to still be philanthropic, still do your tithing, your donating, and satisfy your RMD that the IRS makes you satisfy. But you get to do so without owing any taxes on that whole distribution that comes out. So not only did you save yourself taxes, but you also didn't possibly increase your bracket, which means you might be saving money on your FERS pension as well, on Social Security, on a whole lot of ways that this can help. Now, as great as this one is, there's a couple of details we got to worry about. The devil's always in the details with this stuff, okay? First things first, you got to be 70 and a half. Folks, I know the RMD age is older now. It went to 72 and then it went to 73 or 75, but 70 and a half is the magic age here, okay? Second thing you got to know, your QCD equals to a reduction in your adjusted gross income. This is not an itemized number. So if you're doing an itemization on your taxes, you need to check with your accountant. Number 3, you got to make sure we're sending the money straight to the charity, okay? This is really important. You don't want it hitting your bank account and then you send in the money to the charity. That looks like a regular distribution. And the reason for this is that on the 1099-R that you're going to get, there's not going to be an indication that this was a qualified charitable distribution. You're going to have to actually know what this amount was for, and so factor that into your tax return, or again, let your accountant know that this is something that's being done. A couple other important details here. Donor advised funds are not considered public charities. We're not going to get into that here, but if you're really philanthropic, then that's something you may want to be careful with. Second, QCDs must be paid directly to the qualified charity. We talked about this, right? Money's got to go straight there. Third, this is an important one, the caveat here. Folks, the IRS considers an RMD to be satisfied by the first distribution that comes out for the year. So what does this mean? If you're taking money from your retirement accounts during the year and you have an RMD, all of those are counting for your RMD. And then if you do a QCD, first, those dollars are going to have counted for your RMD. So if you already met your RMD, your QCD is not going to really count for that. Okay, so if you're going to consider doing a QCD, think about doing it in the beginning of the year before you make a whole lot of distributions, because that way it's going to count towards your RMD first. All right, a couple other random things. You can only do $100,000, only $100,000 a year per taxpayer. And the other thing is that, of course, it may be reducing your taxes on your first pension, could be reducing Social Security taxes, could be keeping you from jumping to a higher bracket. So a lot of really good things with a QCD if it's relevant to you. All right, folks, we're almost there. A couple more things and then we'll be done. Guys, if you have taxable accounts, so again, this is a non-retirement account, we want to be doing things like tax loss harvesting. Vanguard estimates about 0.5% that you can add in value back to those accounts just by doing this kind of strategy. And in a volatile year like 2022, they estimate almost 1% in value added back to your account if you're doing this properly. This is a really important benefit, and this time of the year is when you want to be starting to consider whether or not tax loss harvesting is still appropriate for you. Really, you should be doing it throughout the year, taking advantage of volatility during the year, but you still have an opportunity to harvest some of those tax savings right now. You don't get to do this inside retirement accounts because they're tax deferred, so it doesn't matter. But if you have taxable accounts, talk to your advisors about making sure this is happening before the end of the year. Okay, we're doing this for all of our clients that have taxable accounts on a regular basis to make sure that every little dollar that they can save is being put back into their pockets. So here we are. The end of the year is right around the corner, folks. In retirement, every financial move that you take has a tax consequence to it. And tax planning can be a complex topic, but it's really important that you take the time to think about these strategies for yourself. There's a reason that wealthy families put so much emphasis into this, and that's because there is massive value that can come from these. This is just a couple of examples. We've got other videos with a whole lot of other strategies that really dive deep into some of these concepts. And so if you learned something today that can help you make the most out of your money, hit the thumbs up for us. And if you're a late career federal employee and you're interested about how we help our clients have better retirements, check out our website at thefedcorner.com. And until then, stay wise and stay wealthy.